It's 7 p.m. Monday, June 10th here in Seoul.
These are the top stories at this hour. The leaders of South Korea and Finland agreed to boost economic cooperation, especially in the field of innovative growth. President Moon Jae-in also gets Helsinki's support for his peace drive on the Korean peninsula.
Marking the 32nd anniversary of the June democracy movement, President Moon says Korea needs to remove inequality and create a fair society.
Hungarian authorities make final preparations to lift the boat that killed dozens of Koreans out of the Danube River as early as Monday local time.
And a state-run think tank paints a gloomy picture for Korea's economy. Seoul's finance chief once again stresses the need for expansionary fiscal action. NEWSCENTER begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang NEWSCENTER, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Ram.
And I'm Han-daeun. Welcome to our program. We'll begin overseas, where President Moon Jae-in is on his 8-day tour of Nordic nations, starting with Finland. During a summit meeting with his Finnish counterpart, the leaders agreed to expand bilateral cooperation and innovative industry.
President Moon also earned the backing of the Northern European nation on his drive for peace on the Korean peninsula. Traveling with the president, Shin Se-min reports from Helsinki.
Comprehensive discussions between the leaders of Korea and Finland on solidifying global support for the Korea peace process took place to expand bilateral partnerships on the Moon administration's efforts to boost innovative growth as well as the inclusive state vision. During the summit meeting between Presidents Moon Jae-in and Sauli Niinisto in Helsinki on Monday local time, the leaders shook hands on uninterrupted support for the Korean peace drive. An assuring promise from Helsinki, especially with Finland set to take on the role of the 6-month rotating presidency of the European Union this July. This as the visiting Korean leader hopes to secure global support for his peace drive just weeks before a series of major summit meetings on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Osaka at the end of this month and scheduled talks with U.S. President Donald Trump. Cooperation on the cutting-edge technology in connection with the Fourth Industrial Revolution was another topic of discussion. With Finland known as the birthplace of Nokia and the mecca for tech-heavy startup businesses, the leaders discussed ways to strengthen cooperation in future growth engines like next-generation communication technologies such as 5G, 6G, and artificial intelligence. They also agreed on supporting Korean startup firms and small and mid-sized companies entering the European market. And on the people-to-people level, the two sides agreed to open a flight route from Korea's southernmost port city of Busan to the Finnish capital of Helsinki starting mid-2020. Building upon the promised bilateral cooperation on multiple fronts, President Moon will head to the Otaniemi Innovation Hub, known as the Northern European version of the Silicon Valley, to help solidify his drive for implementing a model of cutting-edge industry leading the way in the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Helsinki.
Also today, President Moon Jae-in says the country needs to remove inequality and create a fair society for democracy to move forward. During his remarks to commemorate the 32nd anniversary of the June democracy movement, the president also reminded that it's the people's responsibility to further promote it. Our Park Hee-jun has more.
President Moon Jae-in says building a stronger democracy requires the elimination of inequality and the creation of a fair society. That was the message delivered on his behalf at a ceremony Monday commemorating the 32nd anniversary of the June democracy movement. The ceremony in Seoul was attended by 400 people, including the leaders of the main political parties, but not the main opposition Liberty Korea Party. With President Moon away in Northern Europe, the speech was read by Interior Minister Jin Young. In it, Moon called for an expansion of democracy and emphasized the importance of the people's role in making sure that democracy does not regress to the past. But he also said that on the road to greater democracy, conflict is inevitable. And that means problems need to be solved in democratic ways and through compromise, which will help establish what he called an embracing society. The June democracy movement began on June 10, 1987, when President Chun Doo-hwan handpicked his own successor, Roh Tae-woo. More than 1 million people joined protests nationwide, calling for direct presidential elections and democratization. After more than 2 weeks of violent conflict, Chun gave in, and the constitution was amended shortly after to reflect the calls for democratic reforms. It was a victory for the people. Monday's ceremony took place at a building in Namyeong-dong, where in the 70s and 80s, pro-democracy activists were tortured by the police. It's where student activist Park Jung-chul died from water torture, which also sparked the June protests. The site will be turned into a memorial hall for human rights and democracy by 2022. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
The South Korean government has called for the swift normalization of the National Assembly to get work done on an extra budget bill. In a meeting this morning, ruling party lawmakers, the Blue House and government officials raised concerns that the $5.6 billion supplementary budget bill has been sitting idle for almost 2 months due to the parliamentary standstill. They stressed that deliberations must start this week in order to have the extra budget implemented in July at least, to tackle downside economic risks and help areas recover from a series of natural disasters. The National Assembly has been out of action after the ruling party and 3 minor opposition parties fast-tracked key reform bills in late April. The main opposition Liberty Korea Party is demanding that the other parties apologize and withdraw the move. Newly appointed Vice Unification Minister Seo Ho, who doubles as Seoul's director of the Inter-Korean Joint Liaison Office, is to visit the office for the first time this Friday. The Unification Ministry says it's discussing with the North whether there should be a meeting between the two sides when Seo visits. Seoul is to propose to the North having meetings between the South and North Korean directors of the office only when necessary instead of every Friday, mainly because the North's representative hasn't shown up since February after the Hanoi summit fell apart. South Koreans who ran businesses at the Inter-Korean Gaeseong Industrial Complex left for the U.S. this morning. During their week-long stay, they'll be speaking at Congress and will meet with State Department officials and experts to talk about reopening the complex, where operations have been suspended since early 2016. The business people are expected to assert that running the joint factory park promotes peace between the two Koreas and creates a virtuous cycle in achieving denuclearization. They're also expected to stress that it was wrong that North Korean workers' salaries were used for Pyongyang's nuclear development. Preparations are underway to salvage the sunken tour boat carrying South Korean tourists that capsized in Hungary on May 29th. Let's now connect with Kim Ji-yeon for the latest. Ji-yeon?
As you mentioned, South Korean and Hungarian authorities are working around the clock to lift the sunken Hableni tour boat off the bed of Danube River. The salvage team hopes to complete operations to have all 4 wires wrap the boat. 3 of the 4 are complete, an essential part of the process so that the crane can lift the boat. Authorities say if all goes well, they expect to salvage the boat on Tuesday, Korea time. They're taking measures to ensure what is inside the boat does not go missing in the process by slowly lifting it by around 5 centimeters at a time. Also, a floating dock is to be installed on the accessible entry point of the boat to swiftly carry out any bodies retrieved during the salvage process. The salvage operation is to be carried out with some of the families of the victims in attendance, and the press will be updated up on the Margaret Bridge near where the boat sank. 3 Hungarian teams comprised of experts are also participating in the salvaging process of the Hableni. The incident, which took place less than 2 weeks ago, led to at least 20 deaths and 8 people still missing. There have been no additional survivors others other than the initial 7 Korean nationals. Korean authorities thank the Hungarian people for their prompt support and cooperation leading up to the salvage process and sent their condolences to the victims and their families. The search for the missing continues with 2 helicopters carrying Korean rescuers conducting searches and 2 search boats carrying 3 people each headed south along the river. Transportation of the bodies of the victims back to Korea has also started. Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-wha visited Hungary's neighboring country, Serbia, during the weekend to meet with the Serbian Prime Minister and her Serbian counterpart for their support in finding the missing.
Now, Jian, how's the investigation into the bigger cruise ship that collided with the tour boat going? And also, there's another report of a missing Korean national from a cruise ship in the Mediterranean Sea. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Images obtained by South Korean news broadcaster YTN show traces of the accident have been scrubbed from the Viking-Sigyn cruise ship, which was involved in the collision with the Hableni. The Ukrainian captain of the cruise ship has also reportedly deleted the call and message history from his mobile phone. Amid demands for the cruise ship to be seized, there are also increasing calls to carry out additional on-site investigations into the ship as soon as possible. Separately, a South Korean woman is missing after she reportedly went overboard from a cruise ship in the Mediterranean Sea. A spokesperson for a Norwegian cruise line confirmed on Saturday that the 63-year-old woman has not yet been found, despite a search and rescue operation that was triggered immediately upon news of her disappearance. According to ABC News, the woman was traveling with her husband. They say she left her cabin to get some fresh air, but never came back. It happened when the ship was en route from Cannes, France to Palma de Mallorca, Spain. Back to you.
Very big thank you to our Kim Jian reporting there. Moving on now, a state-run think tank says South Korea's economy continues to weaken amid external uncertainties. With such conditions expected to linger for some time, the country's finance chief has once again stressed the need for expansionary fiscal action. Kim Min-ji reports.
Times are tough for the South Korean economy, and in the near term, it seems the situation will likely stay that way. The Korean Development Institute said Monday that slowing domestic demand and weakening exports are causing overall economic activity to stagnate. Private consumption rose 1.4% in April from a year ago, slower than the average 1.7% growth posted in the first quarter. Exports, along the backbone of the country's economy, dipped over 9% on year in May, extending the downward streak for a 6th straight month.
We don't see it as a crisis, but overall economic activity is slow because of unfavorable conditions at home and abroad, especially the escalating global trade tensions. A recovery in exports or consumption in the short term appears unlikely at the moment, and things could get worse depending on how the U.S.-China trade conflict plays out, given that they are Seoul's main trading partners.
And in light of such risks, South Korea's finance chief Hong Nam-gi and IMF managing director Christine Lagarde shared views on the need for Seoul to take expansionary fiscal policies. They met on the sidelines of the G20 finance ministers meeting in Japan over the weekend. The IMF had recommended that South Korea take expansionary measures, including a supplementary budget, to support growth and job creation. The South Korean government is currently waiting for Parliament to approve its $5.6 billion extra budget bill.
I believe that the expansionary fiscal policy is the right solution for declining economy because it has certain effects on recovering economy. However, if government wants to recover and stimulate the whole economy through expansionary fiscal effect, that side should be really huge. And for that purpose, we have to have political agreements between different parties and the Korean people. And the current size of expansionary budget is not enough to recover Korean economy.
The extra budget falls short of the IMF's recommendation of about 0.5% of the country's GDP, which is roughly $7.6 billion. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The G20 finance ministers and central bank chiefs have apparently been unable to reach a consensus on resolving global trade tensions after their meeting in Japan. Lee Seung-jae has the details.
A two-day gathering of G20 finance leaders came to an end in Fukuoka on Sunday under a cloud of uncertainty about the health of the world economy as trade tensions escalate. Despite problems pointing to the ongoing trade war between the U.S. and China, the finance leaders stopped short of calling for a resolution. In fact, in the joint statement released on the final day, a proposed clause to recognize the pressing need to resolve trade tensions was excluded. According to sources, the deletion came at the insistence of Washington as it looks to continue hitting China with massive tariffs. The statement also contains no omissions that the deepening U.S.-China trade conflict is damaging global growth. This comes as the IMF warned last week that while global growth is still expected to improve this year and next, the U.S.-China trade war could shave 0.5% from global GDP output in 2020. For context, that's equivalent to the size of South Africa's entire economy. However, the G20 finance leaders agreed to compile common rules by 2020 in order to close loopholes that are used by global tech giants to reduce their corporate taxes. The communiqué also includes pledges to increase debt transparency on the part of borrowers and creditors. Sustainable infrastructure development was another priority amid concerns China's massive Belt and Road infrastructure drive is saddling poor nations with debt they can't afford to repay. 이승재, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United Kingdom have reached a deal in principle on a free trade agreement in preparation for a possible no-deal Brexit. This means Korean companies will be shielded from tariffs that otherwise might come back into force when Britain leaves the EU. Ko Ryun-hee with the details.
South Korea's trade ministry has reached an emergency bridge trade agreement with the UK to maintain their deal even if no-deal Brexit becomes a reality. This means that even if the UK leaves the European Union without agreements in place about what their relationship would be like in the future, South Korean companies will be able to ship their main export items such as industrial products without tariffs under the Korea-EU FTA, which took effect in 2011. As for the rough timeline, if the UK crashes out of the Union on October 31st, the new FTA is expected to take effect the next day, after the National Assembly's ratification. This agreement was reached during a meeting in Seoul on Monday between South Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee and her British counterpart Liam Fox, the Secretary of State for International Trade in the UK. Currently, South Korea mainly exports cars and ships to the UK. According to the Korea International Trade Association, South Korea's trade volume with the UK from January to April this year marked around $3.8 billion. During this period, the UK was South Korea's 19th largest trading partner. Minister Yoo said the move will protect South Korea from uncertainties in advance of Brexit amid worsening export conditions due to the Washington-Beijing trade war and China's slowing economy. Seoul's trade ministry is preparing for other scenarios as well, including possible delays in the Brexit decision. South Korea and the UK also vowed to cooperate in emerging sectors, including energy. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
A recent survey shows that the majority of South Koreans think it is okay to collect more taxes to bolster the country's welfare system. Meanwhile, an OECD report shows that although the country's income inequality is bad compared to other members, it has been gradually improving. Yoon Jung-min has more.
More than 7 out of 10 South Koreans would be okay with paying more taxes for expanded welfare services. According to a survey by the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs, nearly 76% of respondents said the government should increase taxes to bolster the country's welfare system. On the other hand, some 22% were against the idea, saying the spending is waste of taxpayers' money. The survey was conducted on more than 3,800 adults nationwide from June to September last year. The survey also found that more than 68% of the respondents agree with the government's measures to put limits on conglomerates so that they can infringe on small and medium-sized businesses. The OECD says South Korea's Gini coefficient for 2016, an index that measures inequality, improved by 11.7% when comparing the coefficient before and after taxes. Though the improvement rate is relatively low compared to other OECD countries, Korea has been gradually reducing its levels of inequality since 2006. Meanwhile, Finland had the most redistributed taxes in the OECD, with its Gini coefficient after tax improving by more than 48% compared to the rate before tax. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
To prepare for what could be another scorching summer, the South Korean government is looking to adjust its electricity billing system for the peak months to help people avoid a big potential hit to their wallets. Park Se-young reports.
With the worst heat in 111 years, South Korea's household electricity use set a new record in 2018. In August, when electricity consumption was highest, the average monthly electricity bill in Seoul was double that of December's. Currently, Korea's household electricity bills are divided into 3 rates, so that the heaviest users are billed at a rate 3 times higher than the lowest users. Last year, about 40% of households were hit with the increased electricity rates of heavy users, which is why the government is looking to revise the system before July. 3 proposals have been suggested and are under discussion. Temporarily expanding the usage ceiling for the first 2 rates during the summer will lower electricity bills for more than 60 million households by around $8 each. Altering the billing system to 2 rates instead of the current 3 will see over 6 million households benefit from an average discount of about $14. However, this revision comes with concerns that it will only benefit those who use the most electricity. The last proposal calls for a flat rate system throughout the year. This will resolve the progressive rate controversy, but around 14 million households in the first stage will see their electric bills rise by over $3. The Trade Ministry will finalize the plan after a public hearing of expert discussions and feedback from the public on Tuesday. If the proposal is approved by the Korea Electric Power Corporation and the Energy Ministry, the revision will go into effect in July. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Protests against a bill in Hong Kong that would allow people to be extradited to mainland China broke into small clashes between police and protesters just before dawn on Monday. So why are people in Hong Kong so against this bill? Or Lee Ji-won explains.
More than 1 million protesters gathered in the streets of Hong Kong on Sunday to protest a bill that would allow China to extradite fugitives or suspects from the city. Protesters chanted, "No China extradition, no evil law," carrying signs reading "Carry off Carrie" in reference to Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam. And what started as a peaceful protest descended into clashes with the police as a few hundred protesters tried to break into the Legislative Council. The council is where debates will resume on Wednesday over whether to pass the bill that would allow suspects to be sent across the border to Taiwan, Macau, and mainland China. The group that organized the protest, Civil Human Rights Front, estimates that the march has drawn around 1.03 million people, which is almost 1/7 of the city's whole population. That would make it Hong Kong's biggest rally since 1997, since the city was handed back to China.
I think the most important thing is the evil law, because it steps on the Hong Kong people's bottom line. Any person, even those who thought at first that it's not their business, now see that as long as they're from Hong Kong, they'll be affected. Everyone can feel this today.
The motherland once promised that we would have one country, 2 systems, but now under the regime of Xi Jinping, Carrie Lam and John Lee, who are betting on the future of Hong Kong people and the freedom that Hong Kong people used to have, will no longer exist if this law is passed.
Chief Executive Lam has pushed forward with the controversial legislation, saying it's aimed at closing legal loopholes and that human rights safeguards are in place. But opponents fear the amendment would allow China to take people for political reasons and undermine Hong Kong's semi-autonomous legal system. Meanwhile, Chinese state media say that foreign forces are behind the protests to hurt China, possibly pointing the finger at the U.S. Another rally is to be held on Wednesday when the decision on the bill is to be made. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
An event was held today in Seoul to promote friendship between China and South Korea, not just politically, but culturally too. It was organized by the local government of China's Guangdong province and brought together cultural and business figures from both sides. Our Oh Soo-young was there.
Busting moves together, Korean and Chinese street dancers are telling a story of friendship. On Monday, globally renowned South Korean breakdancers Jinjo crew performed with Chinese street dancing teams at an exchange event in Western Seoul, promoting closer ties between Korea and China.
We were honored to be invited today by the Chinese government. We may not speak the same language, but we were able to make friends and collaborate through the language of dance.
We were honored to be able to perform with Jinjo crew, and we have a lot to learn from Korean street dancers. We were particularly impressed by their sincerity and professionalism, and hope to spread this kind of culture in the Chinese people scene too.
The event, organized by China's State Council Information Office, Guangdong Province and Hangzhou City, saw a gathering of business and cultural leaders from both countries. Although Korea and China's relations go back to ancient times, diplomatic ties between the modern states of South Korea and China were only formally established in 1992. Since then, trade volume has grown 33-fold as of 2016, while the number of visitors between the two countries surged from 700,000 in 1992 to 10 million in 2015, according to Korea's Trade Promotion Agency. There have also been growing exchanges on municipal levels. Korea's Gwangju and China's Guangzhou have enjoyed sister city relations for 23 years.
We are not only similar in name, but we have also maintained close cooperation in numerous sectors including the economy, culture, and sports. Unfortunately, after that, civic exchanges haven't been as vibrant, but we must continue these exchanges to narrow the gaps in perception between our citizens.
Amid concerns about growing trade protectionism and how this will affect bilateral trade, this story of friendship is meaningful and continues to promote understanding between our people.
Officials hope to strengthen cooperation between Korea and China and keep writing diverse stories of friendship. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
A body presumed to be of an American or French soldier who fought in the Korean War has been found at the demilitarized zone during work to excavate the area and remove landmines. Seoul's defense ministry said Sunday that it's the first time during this project that remains believed to be of a UN soldier have been found. The body was discovered at Arrowhead Ridge, where South Korean, US, French and UN command officials will visit tomorrow. Japan says human error may have been to blame for a deadly F-35A fighter jet crash 2 months ago, rather than technical problems. Tokyo's military said earlier today that the 41-year-old pilot had suffered from spatial disorientation or vertigo. The report stated the pilot didn't signal any problems and didn't attempt an emergency evacuation. Tokyo says it will resume flights of the stealth jet after implementing vertigo training. Buses and parks in Seoul will have free Wi-Fi starting later this year. The Seoul Metropolitan Government says Wi-Fi terminals will first be installed in nearly 1,500 neighborhood buses by October. 6,000 more will be installed on city buses by December and 1,400 on intercity buses by next year. Also by next year, free Wi-Fi will be available at 24 large parks across the capital. One of the most prestigious ballet companies in the world, Monaco's Le Ballet de Monte Carlo, is bringing Cinderella to South Korea for the first time in 14 years. For this production, Korean ballet dancer An Jae-yong will be performing in his home country for the first time since joining the company 3 years ago. Cinderella will be on at the Seoul Arts Center from Wednesday to Friday before moving to the Daejeon Arts Center next Tuesday and Wednesday. That has been your 3-minute news flash. It is that time to take a look at some of the digital media content available on Arirang's social media platforms.
And today, Justin from When in Korea, or Wink, hangs out with a big BTS fan from the UK.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Justin. Today we have a very special guest. He is a huge fan of BTS, but more specifically Jimin. He has invested a lot of money in actually getting surgery to look more like Jimin. And furthermore, he's actually one of the very first European solo artists to ever hit the top 40 K-pop charts on iTunes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ollie.
안녕하세요. 만나서 반갑습니다. 올리입니다.
Also, I have a quick question about your ring, though. Are you married?
No, I'm not actually, but this is Jimin.
It says Jimin on it.
It's Jimin,
okay.
and Jimin's birthday, just to remind me Jimin every day so I can feel Jimin's energy and stuff.
Let's go to specifics here. What do you love or what do you like about Jimin?
Well, Jimin has the most beautiful smile.
Okay.
He's got the most beautiful lips and the most beautiful sweet eyes.
You described it best. In Korea already, you're pretty well known now as the guy or the man who has spent $100,000 just on plastic surgery to look more like Jimin, right? So how do you feel about that? How that you're kind of known for that now a little bit in Korea specifically?
I mean, I'm happy that a lot of Korean people know me, and I'm sure Jimin will know me by now. He must know me. But like, I don't want to just be known for that. Like, I want people to realize how much I love Korea, the culture, the people, the language.
So even outside of just K-pop, you have a genuine love for Korea.
Yeah, I actually lived in Jeju for 1 year before, and I was an English teacher.
Right.
So I fell in love with Korea back then, and I fell in love with K-pop, the culture, the language, and I really love the food. I love kimchi.
Okay guys, so as you can see, we kind of moved places from Hongdae and now we're at Gangnam. We're actually at the exact same restaurant that Jimin and BTS frequently came to enjoy meals.
So excited. So hungry, yeah.
You're so happy right now,
매일같이 여기 와서 밥 먹었어요, 이 자리에서.
어머나.
영국에서 그 먼데 여기 왔어. 영국에서 지민이 때문에.
네.
지민이 너무 보면 너무 좋아하겠어, 지민이가 만나면.
진짜?
진짜. 훌륭해.
This is my dream. I do music, K-pop. 네, 감사합니다.
잘 될
I sing. Wow.
노력하면
Wow.
다 됐다.
감사합니다.
꿈은 이루어지니까 꿈을 열심히 준비하고 열심히 해요. 그러면 훌륭한 힙합 가수가 돼요.
I'm gonna cry. It's really emotional.
So you're getting a little teary-eyed?
Yeah, wow. Wow.
Very happy?
It's very special. I feel like I'm dreaming.
Oh, you feel like you're dreaming?
I will never, ever forget today. I will never forget meeting her. And the food is so good, it feels too good to be true, but
The food is really good though, I will say that. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. So today we got to meet Ollie London.
Jimin, if you see this, thank you so much for inspiring me, making me happy.
가서 제일 좋은 가수 돼서 한국에 또 와서 여기 우리 집에 와요. 파이팅!
파이팅!
하나, 둘, 셋.
Cool and refreshing weather today, but a bout of rain is expected to drench the southern regions tonight.
Let's get more on the weather from our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Hi guys, today's weather wasn't too bad if you were in the upper parts of the country. It was quite moderate. Now, whereas in southern regions have been getting heavy rain and another rainstorm is on the way. Now, especially over in Jeollado province, which could see up to 50 millimeters of rain by tomorrow. And the rest of the eastern coast will have possible chances of some showers as the atmosphere remains unstable. The weather will brighten up for tomorrow for the central areas, where the southern parts of the country will actually remain partly cloudy. Now, Beijing will have a hot one going all the way up into the mid-30s, while Tokyo remains cool under some partly cloudy skies. Now, your Tuesday morning commute will mostly range between 14 to 16 degrees Celsius, except over in Jeju, where it will be a lot warmer at 19 degrees. The air will stay refreshing during the day, with Seoul rising up to 26 degrees under sunny skies, while more rain lingers over in Gwangju tomorrow. Now, skies are forecast to stay bright for the rest of the week with some increasing temperatures. And checking out the weather forecast in Budapest, where the weather is mild with some weak winds today. Now, so the weather shouldn't cause any problems when raising the sunken tourist boat from the Danube River. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
Stay tuned to Arirang for more analysis on current issues and news in depth coming up next.